Hello, BookTube. This is Weekly Reads. I've had a very successful reading week this week. I read 3 novels, so let's get started. First up is Kingfisher by Rozie Kelly. This is a story of a gay male poet who falls in love with an older female colleague whom he comes to call the poet, and later Kingfisher. At the beginning of the novel, the narrator is involved with a man named Michal. And they have decided to open up their relationship. Michal takes immediate advantage of this and begins a relationship with a man named Nicholas. And the narrator begins sort of to spend his lunches with the poet, and then later going on dates with the poet, and eventually beginning a sexual and later romantic relationship with the poet. All while also dealing with several impending deaths. So, despite my trepidations about the novel, I did come to rather enjoy it and like it. There is some nature imagery that at times is really spectacular. And I also really like how the narrator changes over the course of the novel. How he becomes both as a person but also as a writer. But there was that trepidation going in, and that soured my experience of this novel. So, when I first heard about Kingfisher from the Women's Prize for Fiction longlist announcement, and heard and then later read the synopsis for myself, I definitely got I became worried that the book was, whether intentionally or not, going to be homophobic. And I think in a way it does. So the narrator is a gay man who occasionally has sex with women. And the way these relationships are described throughout the course of the novel, the narrator's relationship with Michal and various same-sex hookups he has versus his relationship with the poet, and then with 2 young women that he meets at a pub or club. The way they are compared and contrasted, I think certainly has, whether intentionally or not, a homophobic and certainly heteronormative vibe to it. I mean, the same-sex hookups are pretty much glossed over in a few paragraphs, or paragraph, and then with the 2 young women, more in depth. His relationship with the poet certainly has more depth to it than his relationship with Michal. There's a lot more positivity to that relationship with the poet. As I've been thinking about this and how to sort of figure out my feelings for this novel, I keep coming back to 2 scenes. One is with the narrator and Michal going out to eat, and how just artificial and shallow and just uncomfortable this scene was. And then comparing that to the narrator's walks with the poet and certainly the scene where they go to a pond to swim and how it's described, and it's just, yeah. So it's very hard to escape that thought. And I'm not entirely sure if it was intentional or just Kelly perhaps being more comfortable writing one kind of relationship over another and just didn't realize it, or was never quite alerted to it. I don't know. So my reaction to Kingfisher is rather mixed because I did come to like the novel. It's just my concerns about it are stronger after reading it than before reading it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So the second thing I read over the course of this reading week was The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst. The Line of Beauty is about a young gay man named Nick Guest who finds himself the adopted pet gay of the wealthy Fedden family. Nick befriended the elder child of the Feddens, Toby, while they were at Oxford together. And after they graduate, Nick is invited to stay with the Feddens while he looks for a more permanent accommodation in London as he begins his graduate studies. But he quickly finds himself shunted off to the younger Fedden child, Catherine, who has mental issues. So he is lodger, he is unpaid minder, companion to Catherine, and he himself is desperate to belong, for the Feddens to become a surrogate family, because he's not as connected to his biological family as he is to the Feddens. Part of that is he is attracted to the trappings of wealth, the beautiful things that the wealthy can buy. Excuse me. One of the dangers of making videos when just after I wake up is I have frogs in my throat. Anyway, so the novel is told in 3 sections. The first section is in 1983, starting a few weeks after Nick moves in with the Feddens. And this section is in part him trying to find his place with the Feddens. And the second is him entering the gay dating scene. And he does this through an older man in his late 20s named Leo Charles. So these two sort of strands kind of interweave and intersect with each other as Nick pretty much enjoys various moments in the life of the Feddens as an ambiguous member of the family, as well as beginning to dip his toes into the gay world of 1980s London. And it's really interesting how these two stories intersect. The second section takes place 3 years later in 1986. Nick is now involved with a wealthy former classmate of his named Iguana, who is deeply closeted and has a lot of kinks. And they're working on a production company magazine together, which quite likely is just a cover for their relationship. And so this part of the novel is Nick more fully integrated both with the Fedens and also with the gay scene of 1980s London, with the looming threat of AIDS sort of beginning to take hold. And it's really interesting seeing Nick being sort of still navigating these two worlds and having them while they're more integrated. And then the third section in 1987 is when everything goes to shit. And sees Nick finally, in a way, living his own life or moving on to live his own life, although that is rather ambiguously done. I love this novel. It was amazing. And it took me a while to really realize that not only is this novel a commentary on 1980s London and the hypocrisies of the wealthy, but also that it's a brilliant character study of a young man who is trying to find a place he belongs, and how his conception of himself, like his character, it's really well done. I really enjoyed it. And I'm surprised it took me so dang long to finally get around to it. So I've had The Line of Beauty for 20 years. I'm not entirely sure I remember where I picked it up from. I could have sworn I bought it from Book People, the great bookstore in Austin, Texas, shortly after the paperback release. But the back of the book does not have Book People's stamp on it. So I'm thinking I must have bought it actually in San Francisco, is I think where I bought it. I just don't quite remember where. Maybe it was at a gay bookstore. I know that's where I bought The Folding Star. So I might have bought this as well. I don't quite remember. Anyway, so I held on to it for decades, and a few years ago tried it and wasn't in the mood for it. And then, which makes sense because at the time I really was down on literary fiction. And then this year I've made another stab at reading all of Hollinghurst, and I got to the third chapter the first time I had a go at it, and then made it to the second chapter of the second section, and then this time I have finally read it, and oh boy, was it worth it. I really love this novel, and particularly getting to see really Nick's growth as a character was really nice. Okay, moving on to the final novel I read this week, and that is The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. This novel takes place in 1960s Netherlands. It is about a woman named Isabel whose family fled Amsterdam in the waning days of World War II for a house in the country that her uncle procured for her mother. Isabel is the middle child. She has three brothers, an older brother named Louis, and a younger brother named Hendrik. So at the beginning of the novel, Isabel is the only one living at this house. Her brothers have long since left. At the beginning, she goes to eat with her brothers at a restaurant, and her brother Louis brings along his girlfriend Eva. Shortly thereafter, Louis is called on to go on an extended work trip, and he decides that Isabel will host Eva at the house over the month that he will be gone, much to Isabel's chagrin. And in order to get Isabel to comply, Louis basically enforces the fact that the house is going to be his one day, not hers. She lives there, yes, but the house is going to him when he marries and has children. And so Isabel complies. And at first, and over the course of the first part of this novel, the relationship between Isabel and Eva is very contentious. In the second part, things change markedly. This novel is in part about realization and transformation, as well as revelation. And then the third part is the sort of wrapping up of the story, where Isabel kind of completes her transformation and embarks on her new life, and trying to deal with how exactly the family got that house. So I initially wanted to read The Safekeep in March, and for whatever reason, I didn't get on with it. I think in part, Isabel in the first part is a fairly unlikable character. And it took me going back through this part to realize that Isabel certainly is suffering from repression. She's not comfortable in her own skin. She's just a very repressed, unhappy woman. And it took me this reread to realize that she does seem to have some psychological issues. She self-harms when she is stressed. So, yeah. And the transformation that she undergoes in the second and into the third part is really well done, and I loved it. And how the revelation of her, of exactly where where the house came from, also was really well done, and the ambiguity of what to do now. So yeah, I came to really like The Safekeep. It was really good. Okay. Sorry about having to rush things. We have guests coming later today. So what will I be reading for the next reading week? I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish June off with Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This will be a reread, and it's about a young woman named Jane Eyre who finds herself becoming a governess working for a wealthy individual whom she falls in love with, while also trying to figure out some of his mysteries. I don't think I will be able to get to the 3 other remaining books that I had wanted to read for June. The Night of the Iguana by Tennessee Williams, Open Heaven by Sean Hewitt, and 11-inch by Michal Witkowski, translated from the Polish by W. Martin. So what I'm going to do after I finish up this video is, well, for one thing, put the laundry in the dryer, but I'm also going to put all of the books back on the shelf, except for maybe Jane Eyre. I don't know if I'm going to put up the June book haul onto the shelves today or not. or wait until closer to July 1st. But I think as far as the sort of holdovers for June, I might move The Night of the Iguana to July, since Tennessee Williams is an American playwright, even if The Night of the Iguana itself does not take place in the United States. And then for Open Heaven and 11-inch, I will find something else later in the year to read them. I think that's what I will do. Anyway, that's all I have for this week. I don't think I will be making any more videos later today or into the weekend. Certainly because there should be no random book hauls showing up. So I will be back on Monday with some videos, hopefully. Although I will not try to say what they will be because it never works out for me. But anyway, so I will see you next week. So until then, BookTube, thank you and have a great rest of your Friday and have a great weekend.